Coming at him, he's been 6 and 7. Top the Morgans has been an 8. Oh, wow. No.
Well, what a big day it is, and we're here to chat all of the new rule changes and preview the 5/8s and the halfbacks heading into the new season. This is the SuperCoach365 podcast. We do it for topsport.com.au. Ryan Selvage and Tommy Hudson with you to take you through a big day of SuperCoach. Of course, the game's open now to the general public, Tommy, so an exciting day for plenty of SuperCoaches right around Australia.
Yeah, absolutely. The first day of the year, and obviously for us, we've been kind of doing the team picker and what for a few weeks, but for everyone else, the game is open. You can join leagues, you can play with your friends now, so it's getting real, and it's only about 6 weeks away.
Of course, as well as the game opening, those who are following on with the SuperCoach 365 podcast last year, again this year, you might be familiar with a couple of the other SuperCoach pages or podcasters on Instagram or Facebook, Twitter, wherever you get your SuperCoach news. We're actually been invited to the Turbos Hammies Cup League. So, Tommy, we're going to test ourselves against the best of the best in SuperCoach this year.
Yeah, well, the guy who won it last year is in it. There's a lot of big name podcasts and really good players in the league. So I think I'll be out of my depth a little bit. You might go a little bit better than me.
Yeah, wait and see. I think last year might have been a bit of a, not beginner's luck, but definitely some luck, all things considered as well. Also, if you're tuning into us via the podcast, like you would have last year, you might be able to flick on over to our YouTube channel, a new edition in season 2022. Of course, chatting much the same as we did last year, Tommy, but bringing it to our listeners in a different way.
Yeah, I guess mixing it up this year. Our first podcast seemed to be pretty well received the other day, so happy to go with this method in the future. I guess it's when you have faces like ours, why not put them on camera, mate?
I don't know about that. Maybe we should just stick to Spotify and Apple and wherever else you might get us. Now, of course, as we said at the top there, a big year for SuperCoach. And of course, it starts today, I guess, somewhat officially for the general public, and some rule changes have been announced, and with that, plenty to look forward to, I think, and some good results as well for SuperCoaches who might have struggled at different stages last year.
Yeah, I think one of the most important ones, obviously, and the one that will affect people the most is the more trades, up to 42 this year after being at 37 last year, and obviously last year with a little bit of COVID interruption, but also more probably the concussion protocols now being a lot stricter than they used to be. It's causing a lot more players to miss games, and I think that's had a knock-on effect. Obviously, now we've got more trades to work with. Yeah,
I think that was probably the biggest takeaway for mine as well, and I guess the most superficial one, for maybe want of a better term there, is ones that you can see. I guess it doesn't take too many tactics to read into, you get 5 additional trades this year compared to last. But I think the way that you use those trades will definitely become tactical. One that we spoke about last week and that we've spoken about towards the back end of last year was the scoring system and how that might change or how it wouldn't change. It hasn't changed. Not really too many surprises there, given that the players have been priced up off last year's averages.
Yeah, I guess with the price changes, they couldn't really change it too much. The scoring, if Turbo had been under $1 million, well, then I would have probably been expecting to see, less points for tackle busts and line breaks and things like that. But I think it's probably good that they've kept the scoring system the same because everyone's pretty used to it by now.
Of course, the more trades, I guess it comes a little bit as a safety blanket, I guess, for what we're expecting to be a year full of COVID challenges and, of course, tighter HIA protocols as well. So use your trades wisely, I should say, heading into the new season. That leads me to this one, the trade boost, which has been, I guess, instilled in the game to complement what I just said there about COVID. We're expecting to maybe miss some players on different weeks, and we've seen it, as we've seen with the BBL and the Fantasy Premier League overseas, and this looks like a real tactical addition to the game, this one, Tommy.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where people use this. Straight away, I thought about the bye rounds being the best time to use one of the boosts because they always muck you up with Origin and things like that around there. So I think I'll probably be anchoring a few of mine in the middle of the season. But hey, if you have problems with concussion or COVID at the start of the year, it's a good safety net for you.
Absolutely, and some questions that we've got through at our Instagram today around the trade boost. We'll get to those in just a moment. Let's keep this going though, and the next big change, I guess, was the change trades. Now, people who have jumped on and made trades, Tuesday night have often been able to reverse their trades up till that first kickoff on a Thursday. But now, Tommy, with the rolling lockout, we'll have the ability to do that even on a Friday or Saturday, Sunday, whatever it may be. So this is, I guess, the case. The way I see this being used is you trade in, perfect example, Luke Keary there on our screens. You trade in Keary, he's playing well, gets to Thursday night, you hear he's got COVID, he's supposed to play Saturday. You can effectively reverse that trade up until the moment when he's being kicked and get in someone who's playing Sunday, even though Friday's games have already happened.
I think it's a necessary change because this is a weekly occurrence now, really. Players are getting ruled out later and later. And especially now with COVID being an added factor, it's going to happen throughout the year. So obviously the reverse button was good in the past and will still be used, but this is really making it safer for players to make trades.
The next one, and it's not the final one, but the next one here and the last one that we'll talk about today, but there have been some other changes to go with these. The position updates. So I think we've seen this in the past on occasions where players have had a dual position status added or changed throughout the course of a season, and I think we've already seen some injuries in the pre-season to different players to suggest that players who are currently in a position might end up playing away from that position in the real-world game. So those type of players, their SuperCoach positions might get updated as the season rolls on.
Yeah, I think it's good that the flexibility that the game has now. We see every week players thrown in different roles. Roles probably aren't as stagnant as they used to be. Players playing fullback can easily slide into 5'8" and stuff like that. So the flexibility is really good going forward.
Yeah, and I guess some of those cases that we speak of that I've already seen being discussed is Xavier Savage down at the Raiders. Now, I think he's a fullback on SuperCoach and a cheapie as well, so would be a popular pick if not for the amount of guns in that position. But if he was a CTW eligible player, and we expect him to come into grade on the wing, I think, Tommy, if he's not playing fullback or at least used somewhere in the Raiders' backline, and that could be a case. Kurt Mann, another one who springs to mind. I think he's a centre wing 5'8" on the game as it is, as we record this 25th of January. But with that injury to Brayley, and I've seen him tip to play in the second row or even spend some time at hooker as well. So I think that's where we'll see these positions get updated over the course of the season.
Yeah, and it's a massive help, I think, when players are dual position. I love picking dual position players, so I'll really be on the lookout to see if players are updated to dual and try to make the most of them.
Now, there's some other changes as well here to take note of, and this is important. I think this is something that we discussed in our own draft leagues, and I guess it would have been a topic of conversation in many a draft league. Given what we've seen, particularly in the past two seasons, I think, when players are being rested in round 25. So head-to-head finals, they get brought forward a week early to round 24, as well as plenty of other custom league settings, which I'm yet to dive into, but I'm sure between now and kickoff come early March, Tommy, we'll get stuck into all of that.
Yeah, absolutely. Every league, I'm sure, will have different takes on that. But I think the head-to-head finals becoming a week earlier is a change long overdue, really. The last few seasons, round 25, the week before the finals, has just become a write-off for SuperCoach. Almost every team, especially Melbourne Storm, always seem to rest players the week before the finals. So I think it's pretty unfair when you have, a final of SuperCoach when half the players are out. So it's good to see that change.
Yeah, and without knowing for certain, but I guess maybe you might be, when I say custom league settings, I'm assuming that there's still the case to have it in 25, particularly maybe even in draft comps as well, 25, but I guess that's why that flexibility is there. So if you're used to the traditional round 25 finish, keep it as you will, or stick with the new SuperCoach intended round 24. So some listener reaction to all of that, which was, big news this morning as we all woke up. So I thought, why not chuck it on the Instagram and hear the takes from our followers. Some questions here. We'll sort of bunch these up. So Connor Ward, Champagne Saki, and Pat Sowerby all see the trade boost, and they say, how do we see it working? You've already mentioned the buy rounds, Tommy, but we get 5 of them. So there's 3 others there that you might be able to cherry pick and when to pull the trigger on some extra trades.
Yeah, they've been pretty generous with it, and I guess sometimes your hand is going to be forced when you have a lot of injuries or if there's COVID implications this year. But yeah, like I said, I think the buy rounds are where I really sort of try to target it because you'll get 4 trades in those weeks if you use the boost. So, that's a massive help to me. Where are you thinking of using it predominantly?
Yeah, I made some notes before we press record here. I'll just bring them up. But I think there's a good point here made by Tom Gibbs. He says, I think the changes are great. Trade Boost puts more onus on the coaches. Absolutely. Can't agree with that more. And I think the game becomes even more tactical than what it already is in terms of when you pull the trigger, as I say, on these. I think there's two ways you can look at it. You either go all out early, try to make some cash and get to the guns as quick as you can. So you're targeting rounds 2, 3, and 4, perhaps, and balancing the figures and trying to maybe trade out 2 cheapies to get to turbo or whatever it may be. I'm not sure. Or you can look at it the other way. Whereas I know personally, I struggled towards the back end of last season with numbers come round 23 onwards, 24, 25, and I was juggling 1, maybe 2 trades in total across the final 3 weeks. So. Do you stockpile your trades? Do you build your team around the origin period and look to hit hard for the run home? That's something that we'll discuss in some great detail as the season rolls on, I'm sure. Another one here from Peterson0410 says the position changes, so I think he means the position updates here. Does it affect draft comps, and what does that mean for draft comps? I think it would, Tommy.
I probably haven't thought about this too much. It's something that you'd have to take into consideration. I guess if you have a player who gets their position updated, it'll be a benefit, would it not?
Yeah, I think so. And I think they're not going to get their position changed. Like, so if their hooker, I don't know, who's the example? Maybe a Ruben Cotter, hooker 2RF. I don't think he's suddenly then become a 2RF halfback. I don't know. I don't think... I think they can only get added. I don't think they can get changed or...
It's one for Tom Sangster.
Yeah, I'll hit up Tommy in the group chat later this afternoon. Speaking of groups, though, how about we get into this? Now, I had a couple of questions already about our SuperCoach365 listeners group code. So you'll see it on your screens there, or if you're listening, pull the car over or stop whatever you're doing and take this number down, 567855. That's our group code. So... join that. We may be able to stump up some prizes. Tommy may open his wallet up. I don't know if there's much in there at the moment, but come the end of round 25, he may have a couple of dollars which he could fork out. Tommy, what do you reckon about that?
It's just moths in there at the moment, mate. But no, it's good to have a group going, and we'll think about maybe getting some leagues. It's hard to do leagues because there'll be a lot of people probably keen to enter them. But having the group, at least it keeps everyone competitive with each other, and you can see how you compare to us. I'm sure you guys will probably have the wood over us by the end of the year.
Yeah, particularly if they keep listening to your great tips, Tommy. Speaking of filling the wallet, how about we take a break? We've gone on a little bit long here, and we might even cut that up and run that as its own little dedicated mini podcast on the feed. So if you are listening to us, check your feeds and you can catch the full halves preview as a standalone podcast. But if you're watching us on YouTube, stick around, and the good friends at Top Sport, they might have some help for Tommy to fill that wallet up for the group come the season's end.
Having a bet on the racing this week? Top this.
With Top Sport's best of the best multis, top odds are guaranteed. Place a best of the best multi during Saturday Metro meetings for the top fluck or dividend from the best 3 national totes. Plus, there's best of the best to win up to $5,000 too.
Top that. Download the app today. Top Sport. Feel the excitement.
Don't let the game play you. Stay in control. Gamble responsibly.
Yeah, welcome back to the SuperCoach365 podcast. We've just spoken all about our takes and our reactions to this morning's rule changes, or I guess the way that the game will be changed and played differently in season 2022, Tommy. But let's dive right into this now. This is why everyone's here. We're going to run the eye over the 5/8 and the halfbacks. We'll start with the number 6s. And when we had this conversation this time last year, we said it was a race in 2. We had Cody Walker and Cameron Munster at top of the tree. Cody finished right at the very top of that tree, but there were some breakout stars over the course of the season, which we'll get to here. But I guess it just shows you that our initial thoughts at the start of the season, they can quickly change.
Yeah, they can, and I'm sure the thoughts we have today will change in the coming months. But Cody Walker, as you mentioned there, I think we were pretty keen on him last year, especially with South. We kind of just thought it was the perfect storm for South, and it almost was. And Walker was the star of the show there. He went even better than we thought, and I think he's first cab off the rank again this year.
Yeah, you'll see his numbers on your screen now as you watch us. And 22 games last year, 83.8 points per game, so just round up to 84 there. Comes in at the best, or position 1 rank for the 5/8s. But with that rank, Tommy, comes an expensive price tag and a tough start to the year for Souths. Their first 3 fixtures, not easy. So what are we doing with Cody Walker? You'd love to have him from round 1, but it just may not be possible this time around.
Yeah, it is a hefty price tag, as you say, but obviously to be expected with his amazing form last year. I think there's a few potential cautionary tales with Walker this year. I think no Reynolds is a massive one. I think Reynolds helped Walker have that freedom last year. Reynolds is such a organising halfback, whereas this year Walker probably paired with maybe Blake Taaffe or Lachlan Ilias, and both of those guys are rookies. So I don't think Walker might not have the same freedom as he did last year, and therefore I might go around him, I think.
Yeah, and definitely. And it was something that we said, from the moment that we heard that Reynolds was on his way to Brisbane, was how would this impact Souths, because he has been their general for a decade plus, and Cody Walker, particularly from 2016 onwards when he made his debut, he's shaped the South's attack, but in no small part to Adam Reynolds. And we say they're left side dominant, but I don't think that they can make that happen without what Reynolds does to get them to certain points on the field so that they can open up the left and go Walker, Latrell last year, Alex Johnston. It may not be the way it pans out for Souths this year, but on that South's premiership window, with Reynolds going, does it close? Or does that matter? Is that a consideration for Souths, or is it a consideration for super coaches? Because what are the flow-on effects then? If Souths aren't scoring as many points, perhaps their games are tighter, they're conceding more, Cody's less dominant. Plenty of things to consider.
Yeah, I'm willing to say that the window is shut. I know that could be a big call, but they've made the prelim finals the last 4 years. Grand final last year, nearly won. Bennett's gone, Reynolds is gone. I don't know. I just don't think they can win it now. What about you?
Well, Mark Nichols goes as well next year, so that's another big loss. And of course, rookie coach, you could say. You've already mentioned 2 rookie halves. Latrell, I think he'll stick around. I think he signed an extension, so they're obviously building the squad around the 6 and the 1 as well. But yeah, in terms of getting to a premiership, you need a good number 7. So we'll see. Who knows? These 2 might emerge as genuine front-running halfbacks. We'll find that out very, very quickly as well. We've already mentioned a couple of those names away from Walker, and we'll get to Munster in a moment. But one man who stood out last year that we didn't really foresee it, obviously knew he had some talent, but didn't pick him to be the number 2 5/8 to come the end of the year, and we're talking about Adam Doueihi.
No, he was a bolt from the blue, Adam Doueihi. I know you picked him up about probably halfway through the year. You started singing his praises, and he really did well in that 5/8 throw at the Tigers. He was their best player, easily. But obviously there's some big asterisks there this year. The injury, we're not expecting him back till maybe around round 6 or even later, are we?
Yeah, it could be later. I think, when did he do that ACL? Around 24, 25? It was pretty late on in the season as well, so he's definitely in that basket of a wait and see. Your numbers on your screen there, phenomenal. 77 points per game, ranked 2 overall. He won't be there for those first 3 matches that the West Tigers have to start the year, but 20 appearances last year. Up until that injury, he was a mainstay in that team, so definitely the focal point of the West Tigers attack, he was. So Tigers, we expected them to struggle last year. He was by far and away the shining light that probably stopped them from getting the wooden spoon like we tipped them to get before a ball was kicked.
Yeah, absolutely. He was their best, as I said before. But again, this year, with him missing the first chunk of the season, you'll probably see Brooks and Hastings in the halves. Where does Doueihi come back into the team? Will it be in the centres?
Yeah, question marks there. He maintains that dual position eligibility this time around, although it's different. Last year he was fullback 5/8, this year 5/8 centre wing. So if he was there from round 1, suddenly he's a real, comes right into calculations for super coaches, because I think, yes, it's a hefty price tag, $675,000 to spend on a centre winger, but compare that with Brian To'o, Ruben Garrick, these types, he's actually cheaper, that centre wing slot, given his output, and as we say, the focal point of the Tigers' attack, he was always going to have his hands on the ball again in season 2022.
Yeah, it is just a pity about the injury because I don't think I can consider him for the start of the year, really. Maybe you could sneak him in late in a draft before people are thinking about him. But as far as Classic goes, I'd just be, waiting around for a little while until I think about him, Doueihi.
Yeah, not Classic relevant until we hear word from the West Tigers that he will be back. But I think as recent as last week, he started running, so 4 months post-surgery. I don't know what the return to play is. Could be 6, 7 months. Stay up to date with the NRL physio. He'll sort you out, not SuperCoach365 on that one. Let's move on. Another one of those breakout names. Again, 5'8" eligible this year. Didn't play a hell of a lot at number 6 last year. But Matt Burton, change of clubs and a change of role this season. See his points per game there last year, around 66. A lot of that was fueled by the amount of tries he was scoring. So the change of role at the Bulldogs, it'll definitely shape his output this time around.
Yeah, I'm not sure about Matty Burton. I reckon he's a massively unknown quantity. Obviously, he played well in a few games he's played in the halves for Penrith, but it's pretty different steering the Panthers around compared to the Bulldogs, even though they have some new signings. So, yeah, I don't know. I probably want to watch him play first and watch the Dogs and see if they're any better.
He has had limited opportunities in the halves at his time at the Panthers, so it's something that isn't completely foreign, but the responsibilities of doing that week in, week out is just something he's not being charged to do. So how that pans out over the course of 25 rounds. Does he play Origin as well? Now, it sounds silly, but he has that versatility. We've seen that already in his time in first grade. He could be the perfect number 14 for Brad Fittler because he can cover centre, can cover the halves. At a pinch, you could even throw him in the back row. Covers a multitude of positions. And I think he was pretty close to the squad last year. So might be a bold call now, January 25, but come June, if he is playing well, it's a real possibility, I think.
Oh, yeah, it is. His ceiling is, he has a massive ceiling. Like, his potential is huge. It's just, I don't know, I kind of being maybe a bit negative about him, but just going to the Dogs, he's going to have a big task there. He's going to be their main playmaker, and they've got a better team this year, but, they still haven't played finals for a long time, so he's going to have a big job ahead of him.
Yeah, just bring his fixtures up one more time there. You'll see round 1 away to the Cowboys. Maybe not as daunting a proposition as it is weeks 2 and 3 against what we think will be a somewhat improved Broncos team and then a top 4 contender in Manly. So if you are playing with the Bulldogs, you really want to be targeting those first 2 weeks. Well, hoping that those first 2 weeks, packing some points, particularly for Matt Burton at that price tag of about $570,000. Now, Tommy, number 2 rank, or what we thought would have been the number 2 rank, Cameron Munster. The numbers here suggest he's the 4th best 5'8" in the new season, but I guess going off what we've seen, for the last 7 years in the NRL, Cameron Munster, he is probably one of the best, if not the best, number 6 going around in the game.
Yeah, we'll go back to what we said pre-season last year, and we really had a race in 2 between Munster and Walker, and Walker was a lot better last year. Like Munster, I don't know, he's never looked comfortable last year. His average was quite high, still 74, but I don't know, he just didn't seem himself. And then as we saw in the off-season, he had some issues, but I don't know. I like the narrative this year. I think it's a redemption story. He's fitter than ever. He's off the drink. He's got a new child. I'm buying it, and I'm going to be putting him in my team.
Wow, okay, so Tommy's all over the Cameron Munster train. Round 1, he won't be there, so what are you doing? Are you going to have him from round 1? Because that's definitely a consideration. You're spending upwards of $640,000 on a player who's not going to be there for round 1. Interesting.
I know, and it is against the West Tigers, which he probably would have got 80 or something, so that is disappointing. But I just think long term, he's the 5'8" I want to have this year. I've got my reservations about Walker and probably about the other 5'8". I don't think it's a strong list, really. But I think Munster, he's in for a big year, I really do.
Absolutely. And you've got to trust your gut. And that's something that we've said countless times on this podcast this year and last year already. Back your gut, back your instinct, trade, and play with the team. Most importantly, it's fun, right? At the end of the day, have a bit of fun with it and play with the players that you want to support and that you're interested in watching week in, week out. And if Cameron Munster is that player for you, I'm not going to talk you out of it because, yeah, I agree with you. Come season's end, if he is fit and does play 20-plus games, I think without doubt he is in the top 2 5'8". come the year end. You mentioned that he's fitter than ever. Is he more mature than ever? Because you said, new dad now as well. He maybe takes on a different role there. And the Storm, they're going to have to start preparing to lose some of these more influential leadership types, because Brandon Smith's on his way out the door. Jesse Bromwich as well on his way to the Dolphins. And I think as recent as this afternoon, news that Kenny Bromwich, brother of Jesse, will be joining him at the Dolphins as well.
Yeah, it's a big year for Munster, I think, to, win back the trust of his players and the fans after last year. And he's a senior member of that team. He's out of the leadership group now because of what he did. But like you said there, a lot of players leaving. It's on him to, really unite the team. And I hope that he will thrive under this extra responsibility.
Yeah, and he's capable. We've seen it at the highest level for both Australia and Queensland when he's put on the representative jersey. So we know he can do it. It's just a matter of piecing the puzzles together for Munster this year. And that season average of 74 points per game last year, you said at the top, you thought it was one of his worst years in his career. Well, if not one of his worst years, maybe one of his more quiet years anyway. So if he's scoring 75 points close enough week on week, and he's not that noticeable in a team of stars, suddenly if he is the man taking 3 Daly M points more often than a Ryan Pappenhausen or a Jahrome Hughes or Harry Grant, whoever it is, that average you'd suggest would be upwards of 80. So big year for Cameron Munster and a big year for the Melbourne Storm, as well as they look to sort of bounce back, because they won 19 straight games or whatever it was last year, and then it was just folding towards the back end of the year. I know they saved their worst performance until their last game, but the Panthers just too good at the end. Next 5/8 that we're going to talk about here, Luke Keary. Massive year for Luke Keary, and speak of teams looking to get back into title contention, the Roosters are exactly that, and this man you'd think could be key to all of that.
Yeah, back after the unfortunate injury last year, he was looking really good at the start of the last season, averaging 75 in just the 3 games. So, look, it's been a long time off the park for Keary, and he's had concussion issues in the past as well. So there's a few, asterisks there. But I don't know, I'm pretty keen on the Roosters this year. I think he'll go pretty well. Probably the only other thing I'd say is, even when he was fully fit, he only really averaged a maximum score of 61 points per game across the 2017 to 2020 season. So he was never been a historically massive scorer on SuperCoach. So you'd have to take that into consideration for sure.
It's funny, I spoke with Trent Robinson in the off-season, and I asked him about Luke Keary and what it meant to have Keary coming back into the fold this year. And I looked at it because he's a senior head now. You look at his face and he looks, 19, 20, but he is a senior head. He has to guide Sam Walker around the field. And for the first time in his career, this might be a bit of a controversial hot take as well, but I think for the first time in his career this year, he is finally the dominant playmaker. You look at the players he's played with in years gone by. Cooper Cronk, the obvious one in those premiership years, but even before that at South Sydney, he had Adam Reynolds by his side, who I think at that time was pulling the strings, and Keary probably didn't get the recognition that he deserved as well. But I think this was the year where Keary has to stand up. We mentioned about Munster there, about growing a leg. Then Keary has to do that for the Roosters, I feel, to take some of that pressure off Tedesco and the younger spine members there as well.
Yeah, he's probably the senior member of that spine there at the Roosters. But you do talk about Tedesco and Walker, though. They're very involved players. So I don't think Keary is going to be that quarterback sort of playmaker that they talk about these days, who's just dominating every play. I think Walker really likes getting his hands on the ball. And Tedesco, you can't keep him out of the play either. So I think they'll probably share it around those 3.
Yeah. What are we doing with Keary, though? Tommy, let's click onto SuperCoach mode for a sec, because he's dual position eligible, gets in at a cut price, $528,000. So compared to those likes of Munster and Doueihi when he's back and fit, and Cody Walker, obviously, he is significantly more cheaper. I think he's going to be a very popular pick. And the question I've had already a couple of times in the DMs is Keary or his Roosters teammate Sam Walker. I think they're similarly priced. Walker may kick goals, but looking at Keary, what are you doing with him? I think you've already said you're on the Munster train, but if you're playing away from Munster, would Keary be the next best?
Probably not for me. I do think he'll have a good hand in the Roosters' form and whatnot. But I don't know. I just can't go. I'll go back to the scores he used to post. Never really getting over 60 as his average. That's probably not going to cut it in this position.
Yeah. I think I've got him in for now, but purely at the price. I think he's priced considerably cheaper than what he would have been, and obviously that's because he's coming back off an injury. But I think there's value there, and those first 3 fixtures as well. 2 games at home. He could do anything against the Knights round 1. That could be 100 plus easily. A couple of try assists, a try. I don't know. We saw the way that he played against the West Tigers in round 3, I think it was last year, picked those guys apart. And if we're tipping the Knights to be bottom 4, he could be off to a flying start, Luke Keary. And come round 2, round 3, he may not need a massive score to make some cash early. And then if you want to trade him out, I actually think the Roosters draw opens up a little bit from round 5 to 8. I think they've got the easiest draw in that period, quote unquote. Check that Instagram post we put up about the draw analysis. I think the computer spat out that the Roosters had the easiest draw in rounds 5 to 8 as well. So if you want to persist with Keary, suddenly you get into rounds 9 to 12 in that Origin block preparing, and he could be upwards $600,000. I don't know. That's the way I looked at it anyway. I'm willing to persist through those first 4 weeks to hopefully reap some rewards after that.
Yeah, no, you make a good point. He's definitely a capable player. Maybe I could pick him up for round 1 and then move on to Munster in round 2 when he returns. I don't know, but he's a good option, mate. There's a lot of good options here, but I'm just going with Munster for now. But let's get into a couple more.
Next one off the rank is Alexander Brimson. AJ Brimson, of course, moving to 5'8" this year for the Titans after spending, all of his career, really, that we've seen at fullback. How do you see this panning out, Tommy? We've seen this experiment before with Kalen Ponga at the Knights, where they shift from 1 to 6 and I guess different stages, and Matt Moylan, another one that springs to mind. But Brimson, he's probably more dynamic than Moylan, obviously, but you could maybe line him up alongside Ponga as trying to replicate that anyway.
Yeah, I've honestly got no idea about Brimson. Hey, he's not really been a player I've watched closely over the last few years, so I just don't have a strong opinion on him. Fullback to 5'8", it doesn't seem like the biggest move anymore. A lot of players seem to do it with ease, and I think he should be right with it. Toby Sexton as halfback, is he strong enough to kind of give Brimson the space he needs? I don't know. I'll probably go around him, but there is worse options.
Yeah, and I guess a mixed fixture list to start there as well. The Eels, defensively pretty solid in the past couple of seasons at least, then the Warriors and the Raiders. So that could be really anything. And probably 3 games which then, I don't want to say they're not going to post a hell of a lot of points, but it could be even tight games, those ones looking at it the way we see it now anyway. 60 average last year, and yeah, you mentioned the young spine. He's going to have to sort of play a senior role in that, albeit being so young himself, because he has played Origin before. So Alexander Brimson, definitely a watch, but for mine, yeah, I'll be playing around him early. But if he does burst out of the blocks and suddenly there's a case to get him in, making some cash, again, using that trade boost, targeting players, making cash so you can eventually get to Cody Walker, could be one way of going about it. Next man that could make you some cash because he gets in pretty cheap this year is the prodigal son returns home, Shaun Johnson, 5'8" halfback, $450,000. Only the 10 games last year, coming back from that injury he suffered in season 2020, that ruptured Achilles. Pretty low average by Shaun Johnson's standards, gets him in at the 14th position rank, but some tasty fixtures to start for the Warriors.
Yeah, those fixtures really jump off the page to me, and that average last year really impacted by his injuries and just the injuries. There's so many times we went off halfway through the game and he was only on 40 or something, so not really a true indication. But before that, in years gone by, consistent average in the 60s and even 70s one of the years. So, look, if I am to maybe start without Munster and then move to Munster, with those fixtures there, maybe Shaun Johnson is the man to start with.
Yeah, I'm not going to talk you out of it, and it's funny because we sat here the other day on our fullbacks preview. If you haven't seen it, you haven't listened to it, jump over to YouTube or Spotify, go over and listen to it. We sat here talking up, well, I did anyway, Reece Walsh saying, he's going to come firing out of the blocks, easy first 3 games. Apparently he's suspended rounds 1 and 2. So it shows you how much research we do here. Usually better than that, but in saying that, you mentioned Johnson's output in the last couple of years, aided largely by his goal kicking. Now, he wasn't doing that for the bulk of his games last year. I think the Sharks handed the kicking tee to Trindle, maybe someone else at different stages as well, because they were easing him back in from that Achilles injury. So if Walsh is out, and I thought Walsh would be kicking goals, that's why I liked him so much, but if Walsh is out and if Harris Tavita's not there, then maybe Johnson takes the kicking tee back. I think it definitely helps his cause because usually he kicks 3, 4, maybe even 5 goals a game. Suddenly there's 20 extra points in that average. Bring it up one more time, of 52.7. Suddenly that's closer to 72.7.
No, exactly. The goal kick would be a massive coup for him as well. But yeah, just those first games, they're all going to be in Queensland, probably hot. He could really rip up those opponents. So I'm actually pretty excited now to maybe tinker with my side and possibly get him in.
Last name here in the 5/8 rank before we take a quick break, but cheapies. Now, all of those options there, considerably gun price or mid-range price, whatever way you look at it, but in a position which lacks some real out-and-out cheap options, this is one of them, and I think he'll be a very, very popular pick, be it at 5/8 or centre wing, wherever he is eligible as well.
Yeah, he's a bit of an unknown, Mr. Amone, but last year, I think there was one game against Penrith, it could have been. He played really well. I think he scored a try. That kind of put him on the map a little bit for me. I don't know a lot about him, but like you said, there's not a lot of cheapies in this position. Possibly one we haven't mentioned is Lachlan Ilias, who's eligible here, but Talatau Amone, I think, like you said, he'll be pretty popular. I think you'll see a high owner percentage for sure.
And coincidentally plays his first game against Shaun Johnson and the Warriors as well. So a battle of the experience versus, largely a rookie. But yeah, you say you don't know much about him. You touted as a young gun coming through the junior rep system. I think he won the SG Ball 2019 with the Illawarra side. And in that side as well was Bud Sullivan and Sloan as well. So those 3 guys have obviously made the progression through to the NRL, and how they develop, well, that remains to be seen. So I guess wrapping that up, Tommy, sounds like you're sticking with Cameron Munster, but for the listeners and the viewers as well, there's a number of options there that they could sink their teeth into.
Yeah, there is, and I guess Munster does miss week 1, so it is a big factor, and maybe you could look at starting with someone else and working towards him. Have you settled on who you're going with? Mr. Keary?
Keary for now, yeah, but I think Johnson, I keep calling him Johnston. Shaun Johnson may provide some value there, pending the goal kicking. So watch the trials would be my advice there. If he is confident enough to take the tee, definitely. I think he's 20 points, maybe that's generous, 15 points undervalued there at that price. But otherwise, I think Keary, safe bet. And if the rules aren't, the rule changes around 6 again, don't impact the Roosters too much. I think they're going to be a top 2 team. So expecting plenty of points out of the Roosters in 2022. Stick with us. We're going to take a short break. Coming up after the break, we'll chat all things halfback.
Having a bet on sport this week? Top this.
Whether you're into cricket and curling or golf and greyhounds, Top Sport will let you on for plenty. And with literally hundreds of markets from your own backyard to the international stage, Top Sport has you well covered. So if you want to get the top odds every time, bet with Top Sport.
Top that. Download the app today. Top Sport. Feel the excitement.
Don't let the game play you. Stay in control. Gamble responsibly.
Yes, welcome back to the SuperCoach365 podcast. We do it for topsport.com.au. If you are fancying having a punt on the NRL this year, you'll see all the futures markets scrolling across the bottom of your screen on YouTube. Some good value there. But if you are listening to us and you do want to jump on and have a look at the prices, you can do so. Just go to our Instagram, click the link in our bio. You can get on there. Tristan and the team will know that we've sent you along. Make an account and deposit, and they'll look after you, I'm sure. Oh, they'll look after you anyway. So do that, topsport.com.au. Great to have their support again in season 2022. If you are having a play, do so responsibly. Tommy, let's talk halfbacks. That's why, another one of the big reasons why everyone's here. And the man that sort of leads the charge, he leads it by a long way, Nathan Cleary. He was just out and out the best in the position by some distance last year.
Yeah, 2 years in a row, he's been clearly the best halfback on SuperCoach and in the game. Obviously the other day we spoke about Turbo and his high price tag. Cleary also very highly priced, and I don't know if they're going to be able to get both Cleary and Turbo in their team. But I think Cleary is possibly more important. I just think there's less depth in the halfback slot than there is in fullback.
Yeah, absolutely. I'll echo those sentiments there as well. If you did have to pick one over the other, I'd probably lean towards Cleary, only because, as you say there, the depth in the position. We've pulled some numbers out here. He's about 30 points per game better than the next best halfback, and that's Daly Cherry-Evans. We'll chat DCE in a moment. 51 points per game better, 51 if you don't mind, than the average halfback. Now, you might ask, what's the average halfback? Well, we've crunched the numbers. The average halfback the average player in the NRL last year played about 11 and a half games. That's of 640 players. So let's call that 12. So halfbacks who have their primary position as halfback on SuperCoach with 12 plus games in 2021, Cleary is 51 points per game better than that player. So you think of a draft league especially, we're talking then the halfback that's top of the waivers essentially.
Yeah. Look, I don't know what you've said there. It was a bit confusing, but I followed you. But it just shows how incredible he is. And whereas I'm not saying Turbo's form last year was a one-season wonder by any means. I'm sure he's going to be incredible again. I just think Manly were on that role. But I think whereas Penrith, they're kind of just going to be good for a long time. They've got so many young players, and he's the focal point of that. Nathan Cleary, he's always going to be involved. And I just think goal kicking as well, he's pretty much foolproof.
Yeah, 4.7 goals per game. That's an equal NRL best, well, last year anyway, with Adam Reynolds. So I expect that number to drop somewhat for Adam Reynolds this year, given the Broncos not as competitive as South Sydney, you'd imagine. Cleary, you mentioned hands on the ball, 70 receipts per game last year. Now, the next best halfback eligible SuperCoach player that's currently active, so not Mitchell Pearce, was Luke Brooks and Luke Keary with 60 possessions per game. So Cleary on average is touching the ball 10 more times a game than the next best halfback. 21 try assists last year at 1.3 try assists per game. That's the best in the NRL. And you mentioned his goal kicking already. Career goals at 84%, 423 from 504. He just doesn't miss.
No, his goal kicking's always been a massive factor. His dad was a goal kicker as well, Ivan. So, yeah, look, I don't think there's much more I can say, really. He's the first person I put in my team last year, too. I just think if you don't have him, you're not going to win. So, yeah, Nathan Cleary for sure.
Yeah, I'm with you as well. We'll chat the other options here. If you can't afford Cleary or you want to play away from Cleary and you think, well, he might have a slow start to the year, I'm happy to play around him. Obviously coming back from that shoulder injury as well, which he suffered last year. Will he be there for round one? We think so. Having a look at his fixtures of just very quickly again, Manly in round one, that one's at Panthers Stadium, then the Dragons and the Knights. So they get through that round one fixture okay-ish. Suddenly he opens up the draw a little bit, rounds 2 and 3, and that average of 108, I can see him bettering that even. It sounds silly, but I think just hands on the ball. Panthers, I think they can go to another gear this year. I can see Cleary just dominating the way he did last year, and maybe even more so. Yeah,
well, I don't know if he can top 108, but he may not need to. But like you said, Penrith, there's no reason why they won't be massive factors again. Like I said before, massively a young side. They're all kind of mates off the field, and you just tell they're a unit, and it's just going to bode well for years to come. So, I mean, if you could sign SuperCoach players on 4 or 5 year deals, you'd sign Nathan Cleary first, that's for sure.
Yeah, you'd never let him out of your team. There would be no off-season. He'd be playing 365 days a year. Number 2 on that list, in a lot of those statistics that we mentioned there, was this man, Daly Cherry-Evans. 22 games last year, an average closer to 80. And his position rank says 1 there, but obviously we've got that wrong. His position rank's 2. He falls in behind Daly Cherry-Evans, Nathan Cleary, and $695,000 at the price. He's significantly cheaper than Nathan Cleary is, but again, a tough start to the year with the Panthers and Roosters in their first 2 games. And there's a couple of asterisks next to Cherry-Evans as well, Tommy.
Yeah, there is. No goal kicking's a big one. Obviously, Cleary has that over him. Cherry-Evans scores last year, though. Obviously, with Manly going on that run, I'm just looking at it now. I think there's about 7 or 8 there above 100, a few above 150. He had a massive year. He had a really slow start, but so did everyone at Manly. So, look, that probably tells you that he's kind of relying a little bit on, I guess, Turbo's form, I would say. So maybe that's a selling point for DC. If you can't get Turbo, at least you get someone from that Manly setup and maybe get DCE.
Yeah, looking at that draft lens, maybe even more so than a classic perspective there as well. You mentioned Turbo. What an influence he is upon Cherry-Evans' game, not only in the NRL but also on SuperCoach. Look at these numbers here. Turbocharged performances from Cherry-Evans. 87.1 points per game he averages when Trbojevic is in the team. See the numbers there. 17 games last year, so a big sample size. And in the 5 games without Turbo, to start the year, there might have even been another one towards the back end of the year, I think, although they both were out, I think round 17, but 52.8 points per game. So that average on that output suddenly drops quite significantly. And we mentioned that average halfback, 51 points per game, better or worse off than Cleary. That's about that number there, 52.8. So just shows you that the impact which Turbo has on all players in that Manly team, but maybe none more so than Cherry-Evans. Maybe Ruben Garrick aside.
Yeah, I was going to say Ruben Garrick, who we'll obviously get to when we talk about the backs, but yeah, I suppose that is an issue. If Turbo was to go down, which we all hope and pray he doesn't, but if he was, DCE would be a sell, really. So, yeah, there's a few things there which mean he isn't as good as Cleary, but then again, you're paying $300,000 less, so I don't know. You do the math.
Career average, or at least from 2017 to 2020, hovered around that mid-60s, and suddenly Manly arguably have their greatest season on record since they won the premiership in 2011. I don't think it's a coincidence that suddenly Cherry-Evans leaps up to closer to that average of 80. A career year it was for Tommy Turbo. You could say maybe Cherry-Evans, and so too it was this man, albeit a short career, in fact. But Nicho Hynes moves to Cronulla. We mentioned that change of role for Matt Burton at a new club. That's exactly what we're going to see here with Nicho Hynes as well. Dual position, he retains that this year, but he loses that centre wing eligibility, Tommy, which is important because I feel a lot of the value in Hynes last year was playing him through the centres because effectively you had 3 gun fullbacks in your side at any one time. Nicho Hynes, 22 games last year, 78.2 average. He comes in here as the 3rd best halfback. Phenomenal to say that about a guy who this time last year we wouldn't have even rated a mention.
Well, has he even played halfback in the NRL? It's quite crazy that he's going to the Sharks to play halfback when he's never really even played halfback. I think it's a bit of a risk from the Sharks. It's a bit of a risk to have him on SuperCoach. I think, like you said last year, CTW was his spot for SuperCoaches because there wasn't a great deal of options there, and then you had Hynes just making so much money every week with his scores. So, look, I'm going to just wait and see with him, wait and see how he goes in a new club. Players who leave the Storm often don't go on to bigger and better things. So, yeah, it will be interesting to see how he goes.
And suddenly he's gone from having that flexibility to float both sides, be it in that fullback role or when he did come off the bench at the Storm. Now he's the general, right? He's conducting the traffic, and he will be the one that will be freeing up other players. So that average that was closer to 80 may not rate anywhere near that this year. At least watch it anyway. See how he goes in the trials. Could be Matt Moylan playing more as that organiser type role in the traditional number 7. Hynes gets the chance to float and roam. Goal kicking as well. I think that propped up his average last year. Will he kick goals at the Sharks? I think he will. Braden Trindle seems to be on the outer, Tommy, and I know you got big raps on Trindle.
Oh yeah, I just thought he was pretty solid last year. I had him in draft for a little bit, and he did a good job for me. Some bit biased probably, but look, I want Moylan also because I was keen to get him somewhere in my setup too. So I don't know what they're going to do there really. I think Hynes obviously is guaranteed a spot somewhere in the halves, but then again, it would just be interesting to see how he goes because he was so good last year playing at the Storm, who were winning by 40 every week. He was just at the back having the time of his life. It's going to be a bit different, organising a team who probably will be battling around top 8 spot.
Do you have him in that trap category to start the year? Is he a stay away, or is he just a sort of a wait and see? If people are playing this game last year and they thought Nicho Hynes was such a good player, and maybe they're not as familiar with his change of role and what that may mean? Do you see him as a genuine trap option to start the year?
I think so. I think that average of 78 is misleading. I don't see how he would possibly get 78 average again unless we've just massively underrated him. But like he had it made to suit last year with everything going in his way. So I just don't see how he can reach those heights again, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Played in a very, very dominant team for 19 straight games. I think we said that they came out with the 2 points, and influential in all of that was this man as well, Jahrome Hughes, $640,000 thereabouts to start season 2022. 22 appearances last year. He was a mainstay in that team. 73 points per game. Comes in here pretty tidy up the list himself, and games against the Tigers, the Rabbitohs and the Eels to start the season. Could be some points on offer there, round one particularly.
Yeah, absolutely. If you can't afford Cleary, or if Cleary's ruled out of the early rounds with that injury, well, Hughes would be my next man to go to. He comes out of that strong Storm team that we just spoke of, but his role doesn't change. He stays there. He's still the halfback. He was so good last year. And I think he's the genuine sort of next pick other than Cleary.
Yeah, a few notes I've made here. I think he's now a genuine number 7. Genuine in the new sense. He's not a general like a Cleary or, you think back, even Cherry-Evans to an extent, or, years gone by, sort of that organiser, the Adam Reynolds, and before that, Joey springs to mind, obviously. But the way that the game is played these days with the running halves, he's now a genuine number 7, I feel. The rule changes have made him a better player. We've seen that, I think, year on year. He just keeps getting better, Jahrome Hughes, and more points. The Storm have changed the way that they play the game as well. They're more of an attacking mindseted team than they had been in that glory. I was going to say the glory years of the Storm, but I think we're still living in those years, really. And I guess the only knock on Jahrome Hughes that I can see here is, well, besides being in the same position as Nathan Cleary, he doesn't play round 13. So whereas you'd usually get some value out of these New Zealand halves, thinking that Cleary and Cherry-Evans will probably be in Origin camp at that time, unfortunately Hughes isn't an option in round 13. So that could make someone like a Hynes or a Luke Keary, maybe, if you want to flip that dual position eligibility, someone like those types even more valuable come the middle part of the year.
No, that's a good point as well. If you want to take SuperCoach seriously, I guess you got to look ahead to things like that, the crunch sort of rounds where there's a lot of players missing. But I think going back to what you said before, like, he is a genuine 7 now. Obviously, at the start of his career, we weren't really sure where he was going to end up, whether it would be the 1 or the 7. But he's one of the game's premier 7s now. And I think, like I said before, if you can't get Cleary, go for Hughes.
Now, I've already spoken about the best halfback in the game, and that, of course, is Nathan Cleary. But if you are playing away from Cleary and those more expensive types that we've mentioned there, Hughes, Cherry-Evans, Hynes, the next man on the list could prove some real value, Tommy. Now, only a small sample size to go off last year, but Toby Sexton, 62 point per game average. It's pretty handy from what was a rookie 7 at the time.
Yeah, he was a surprise packer. He looked good in his 4 games. I think I picked him up in a draft league for those 4 games, and he did a really good job. I just needed someone to fill a hole, and he did more than that. So, yeah, look, the first getting a full season here under his belt with Brimson in the halves could be a sneaky good halves pairing there at the Titans.
They're going to be scoring points, I think, for sure. Maybe not in those first couple of games there, and I think traditionally they just seem to start the year slow, the Titans. They sort of build a little bit, and of course I think it was 2020 they finished the year with 5 straight wins, 5 or 6, could have even been more. And you mentioned Brimson, he was influential in all of that. The good form of the Titans just gone to get them into the finals came largely off the back of Sexton, and it's a real vote of confidence in the young fella's game that they were willing to move on what looked the general of the team, Jamal Fogarty, to the Raiders. So they've put all their eggs in the Sexton basket, kicks goals as well. Yeah, it's a young spine, but it has the potential to be something pretty special.
It does, and they obviously moved on Ash Taylor as well, so there's a lot of halves there that they've got rid of, and they're putting their full trust in Toby Sexton. I don't know, it is a little bit of a risk, though. I think he only did play 4 games last year, so you're going off not much. It was the back end of the year. I don't know. I'd rather just wait and see how he goes, but he is pretty cheaply priced. So maybe if you have Cleary and you wanted a good cheaper option as well at halfback, if you wanted to really stack that halfback slot, he could be a go-to man.
Definitely. Or, yeah, it depends how risky you want to be. If you just want to spend the cut price, he may be an option early. But yeah, I mean, run that Sexton race at your own risk. So too, a cheaper priced option that gives you that dual position eligibility as well is this man who returns to the NRL this year, Jackson Hastings, $350,000, and unable to really pull any figures around his performances in the English Super League the past couple of years. But I think he won a Man of Steel one of his seasons he was over there, and looks to come back to the NRL. Definitely a more mature player. And the West Tigers will need that. They'll need a general to get him around the field while Adam Doueihi's not there.
Yeah, but I don't know. It's a big risk. I've seen a lot of people sort of saying that the Tigers are going to go well with Brooks and Hastings as the halves, but why? Hastings was good in England, but it doesn't mean much for over here. I'd definitely sort of wait and see how he goes. Baptism of fire against Melbourne. Maybe just wait and see how he goes in the first week. He could get in the minuses. Wow.
I guess the one thing, the one good thing about having Hastings back, well, if you're playing with him in your SuperCoach team, that is I thought he'd be priced around the 440, 450,000 to start, just going off what we've seen in years gone by at the Roosters. I think it was 2017 or 16. He led them around. He was the halfback. I think it was when Pearce was out with the dog scandal. And he averaged around 55. So it's not a bad knock. If he's kicking goals suddenly as well, and that was without goal kicking. I think Latrell was kicking goals for the Roosters at that point. So that was without goal kicking. So if he is kicking goals to start the year and he can average 60, I mean, that's a win at that price. But yeah, are the Tigers scoring 5 tries a game like the Roosters are? Probably not.
Well, that's the thing. I'm probably being a little bit harsh on Hastings. I'm sure we'll go in the positive in round one. But we both don't rate the Tigers. You know, we haven't for a few years, and I look at their squad this year. I just don't see much strike power or anything really. So I just don't really want to be on a halfback in a bad team. I guess I'm trying to say.
Yeah, it's a risk, isn't it? And well, especially if you're going off an average from, what is that now? 6 seasons ago, and hoping he just replicates that. He could be worse, as you say. He could churn out 30s. And would you be surprised at the West Tigers? No, maybe not. I mean, he may have one attacking stat, make 15 tackles, and there's 35 points. And would you be shocked? Not really. So, a risk, but definitely one. I think there's more upside there than downside. He may not lose you a lot of cash at that price, but I don't think you can be expecting big scores like we say there that we saw at the Roosters. Well, not even big scores, just solid scores. Speaking of young halfbacks finding their feet in the NRL, Hastings did that at one stage, and Blake Taaffe. Now, we expect him to play a bit of halfback, Tommy, or fullback. Probably plays fullback to start the year, but dual position. We'll speak about him today. We spoke about him a little bit in our fullback preview, but Blake Taaffe, yeah, I think he's going to be a real popular pick to start the year.
Oh, yeah. Almost first pick cheapie for me because he's going to get a start at fullback with Latrell out. And then, having played a grand final already and played well, you'd think he's going to get a spot somewhere in the team after Latrell's back. So he's in my halfback reserve spot, and I think he's really just a must-have in your team somewhere.
Gives you some flexibility there as well. He's cheap enough. There's no downside really, is there? He's not going to lose a lot of cash even if he has, really bad games. It's a tough start to the year. We sort of mentioned this as well about Lachlan Ilias the other day. If he does come out of the blocks slow in, games 2, 3, 4 of his career, they can fall back on Taaffe. So we've seen that. He's handled himself on the big stage. I think he was probably one of their better players in the grand final. There's questions over will he be able to catch the high ball and Nathan Cleary's high ball. I think he had a tough first, was it the qualifying final? He might have put a couple down, but he bounced back, didn't he, without Latrell there. Lachlan Ilias, he's going to be another popular pick. I think as the game opened up today, he was the most popular pick, 58% owned. And it's kind of like the Sam Walker effect of last year, isn't it? Just that cheap price, and a lot of people will go Cleary Ilias, I think, to start the new year.
Yeah, well, he's actually dual position as well at 5'8" and halfback, so I've managed to fit both Ilias and Taaffe into my team. I just think Ilias will obviously play the first 2 weeks as well with Latrell being out. He'll play at halfback with Taaffe at the back. So I don't know who wins out after Latrell's back. What do you see happening there?
Yeah, again, I sort of gave a little bit of a crystal ball prediction of how it could play out at Souths, juggling these two young guns, and I don't know. They've obviously got wraps on him. They've anointed him the heir to the throne, so to say. Put the confidence in him to take over from Adam Reynolds in the 7. He'll get first crack, so could be a rough start though. And he might play a mixed role there with Taaffe, so a bit of a wait and see there. Oh, it's funny I mentioned that name, Sam Walker. I was saying to you the other day, what a blessing it was in disguise to have someone like Sam Walker, $173,000, go on to play most of the season. And he never really looked in doubt. From the moment he came into grade, I think, a couple of games he looked injured, and he got rested, I guess, towards the real late start part of the season. But for that good chunk of time, he was the 7. So we're hoping for something like that with Ilias or Taaffe, just some consistency in the South 7.
Yeah, I don't know, like you say, if we'll actually see, the meteoric rise of a Walker, because I think we all made about 500,000 out of him last year. It's ridiculous, really. If you're on there from the first week, he went up so much. But look, you'd just be happy with players like Taaffe and Ilias to make a little bit of money in the early stages of the season and then move on to bigger and better things.
Okay, that considered, which way are you swaying? I think I know who you're with for round 1 at least. Well, at least at round 1 as we record this late January, which is kickoff is still some 7 weeks away, I think. Who's your halfbacks and your 5/8s for that matter as we go to air?
Yeah, well, with Cleary, obviously I've sung his praises enough. I just think he's the player you need to have. I've got Taaffe as the reserve halfback. I think he's just guaranteed to start, so make some money there, hopefully. I do have Munster in at 6, but as I said before, maybe I'm starting to second guess that just for the first round. Maybe someone like a Johnson could come in. And then I've got Lachlan Ilias as the 5/8 reserve. What about you, mate?
Yeah, 3 out of 4 the same there. I've just gone with Keary purely at the price. I think there's some upside there, and yes, his career average sort of hovers around 60. But I think that there is definitely some value there to be had in those first couple of rounds if they can start strong. And the Roosters traditionally start their seasons pretty strong, I feel, and they'll be keen to have him back alongside Tedesco and co. Tommy, we've gone for over an hour today. So big thanks to you for jumping on as well, and plenty to look forward to as well in the coming weeks, isn't it?
Yeah, we'll get through the rest of the positions. Obviously, still some big talking points to have, and then before we know it, we'll be into the trial matches and whatnot. So plenty to talk about. The season's only 6 weeks away.
Stay with us. Don't go anywhere. This is the SuperCoach 365 podcast. We'll see you soon.